Man,
Let's
it's a big
go.
day.
Let's go. He's on the
Hey
media
guys.
tour right now. How's the media tour been?
It's not been so crazy. It's not been that crazy. So you guys are I think like second or third on deck,
Let's
which is
go.
great.
So I
Whoa.
saw you were on MTS. How was that?
MTS was great. Yeah. A lot of fun. And by the way, that intro video was kind of fire. It was really cool.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. So earlier in the show, we were showing this. I'll just pop this up because it's been a crazy last 6 months for MoonPay. Talk a little bit about where you guys fit into this stack, and we can dive into Dawn, the new role that you have at MoonPay and what you're building. But maybe just to we opened this can of worms at the beginning of the show of like the MoonPay acquisition strategy and how all of these things are coming together into a suite. What was it about that made you, on your end as the founder, want to join this team and this ecosystem?
I think it's incredibly competitive right now to win. And the reason why it's so competitive to win is because the rate of advancement of AI is causing a lot of services to coalesce into one interface.
Hmm.
You see that with almost every industry. And in particular, look at OpenAI and Anthropic. OpenAI just launched this forward deployed engineer company that is attempting to put AI into every company that exists. Anthropic is doing something similar when it comes to consulting businesses and working with different consulting firms. You see this like really, really big verticalization and horizontal shift in the industry. And the reason why is because AI enables these big companies to move at the pace of small startups while still leveraging their massive distribution advantage. And so to me, M&A is like the angle by which these companies are aggregating the resourcing and the talent and the infrastructure in order to be able to deploy that vertical and horizontal experience. And as you can see, MoonPay is really, really killing it with that angle as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a lot of these different pieces of what an enterprise or modern financial company would need all coming together. We were talking about the history of MoonPay a little bit and where they've started versus where they are now. It seems like in the last really few months, they have really stepped up in terms of bringing a lot of this together to serve the modern financial organization. Maybe bring us into now what's next. So Dawn is in the family. You're building and leading within this organization now. Talk a little bit about the agent strategy and what is going on with MoonPay agents. I was looking here. This seems to be a really core part of the stack in terms of how MoonPay is thinking.
Yeah. Well, Dawn Labs is an applied research lab that attempted to apply AI to finance. And there's a couple theses we had at Dawn Labs. The first is that finance is going to be democratized, no longer accessible to the few quants and traders at bigger firms. And I think you're going to see this plethora of anyone being able to access and test out the same ideas that these quants at bigger firms can do. The other two theses are that agents are going to be the primary operators of finance. You already see kind of that shift taking place. A lot of companies are now pushing for agents to use finance. And X402 and MPP are examples of protocols that enable agents to use finance on chain. They're steadily growing in adoption. And I anticipate by the end of the year or next year, you're going to see exponential growth. And the third thesis that I have is that the future of finance is on chain. And so given those three theses, Dawn and MoonPay, to a larger extent, is focusing on figuring out the right ways for agents to interact and operate on money. The difference between money and other industries where AI is being applied is that money inherently carries a lot of risk in terms of movement. And because of that risk, there needs to be different sets of permissions and particular interfaces in order to actually move that money. As a human, you wouldn't be comfortable with an agent moving around $1 million and putting it in some sort of LP, because what if the agent messes up? Even if the agent is better than the human and makes less mistakes than the human, a lot of humans would still not trust the agent to do that. This is actually one-to-one with how radiology works. In radiology, essentially, you have these scans, and you have radiologists essentially are able to see from those scans whether someone has cancer. And computer vision models are actually really good at taking those scans and determining if someone has cancer. They're much better than human radiologists, but still, you need the human radiologists because people want to trust the human radiologists, not the machines. Same with cars. Cars, nobody trusts Waymos or Teslas. They would rather prefer a human driver, even if the Waymo and Tesla is better than a human driver. And so we're going to see that with money too. And so we have to design the right interfaces so that people trust agents to move your money.
Intro us a little bit to OWS or Open Wallet Standard. Are you guys calling it OWS? Is that the short internal name for it or no?
That is the internal name for it. Yep.
OWS. Okay. Intro us to this and what that now means for you and where you're really trying to spend your time. So, like finance and AI, or I think I was listening to something recently about Anthropic reporting on just their core segments on the enterprise side and where a ton of the volume is coming from. And money and finance and those use cases are really driving a lot of what they're seeing. Where do you see spending your time, like, from a priority standpoint in terms of OWS and what those core strategic priorities are for you as you enter the firm, as you build this out now?
AWS is actually the backbone behind all our CLI products. The Dawn CLI, the MoonPay CLI, they all rely on AWS as the shared wallet layer locally in order for the agent to interact with your wallets. So AWS solved a real problem that people had, which is all these CLI tools that agents and humans used to have access to spun up their own wallet stores. That caused fragmented liquidity. That also caused this problem where people might forget where they place their wallets and lose funds. But primarily the big problem is you only want to on-ramp your funds once to a wallet, and you don't want to deal with many different wallets in different places. AWS collapses that fragmentation. There's one wallet store. That store is protected pretty well, and multiple services, whether it's Dawn, whether it's MoonPay, whether it's Dflow, whether it's Polymarket, and so on and so forth, can access that same wallet. Even Tempo can. And so AWS solved this really critical problem where we had incredible wallet fragmentation. All our services are built on top of AWS.
Can we just, while we're looking at this fund flow, maybe walk us through this as if you were explaining this to a seventh grader or maybe a fifth grader? And
Golden retriever.
what this breakdown looks like. This seems like a really simplified way to look at it.
Yeah. Let's say that you are attempting to tell your agent to do something that involves money on chain. That category of things is pretty wide. Maybe it's interacting with the lending protocol. Maybe it's trading on Hyperliquid, trading on Polymarket, on Solana, Tempo, so on and so forth. How do you do it? You need a wallet. And there are some tools that you can use to spin up a wallet for you. That wallet is stored literally in a file on your laptop. And each of those tools will spin up a wallet that is stored on a file on your laptop. And then your agent will open that file, read the private key, and then execute the transaction in order to interact with that lending protocol or that swapping protocol. That's really insecure. You don't ever want your agent reading the private key. You might have noticed, like, there was news today that broke about how there was an incredible number of hacks that just happened with a lot of NPM packages. And I think that behavior is just going to become increasingly common. In general, you want to limit access to critical elements that hold money as much as possible. And so that previous paradigm is not good enough. What OWS does is it manages the wallet part completely. All these tools that people develop, they don't need to think about the wallet stuff. OWS has already figured that out. OWS already has a great security model. It already has a great storage model. It already has implemented a policy layer. A policy layer is essentially a layer saying you may only create a transaction that has maybe a daily limit of $1,000. And that limits the surface area of attack. And so OWS just has the full set of primitives that any tool could ever want in order to manage wallets. And that enables any person, non-technical or technical, to use a service like OpenClaw, or, and in my opinion, I'm a big fan of the Codex desktop app, in order to interact with these tools and do like really complicated things by just telling their agent to do it. And also know in their heart that, it's pretty safe.
Yeah, because that's where people's mind will immediately jump when you sort of say OpenClaw and my money, right? And the larger sums you get, that the sort of hair on the neck starts standing up a little bit, or Codex or whatever agentic use you have here. But it's interesting talking about all you're saying, like the protocols, the policies built in here to sort of prevent any worst case scenarios. I can see
Yeah.
that being a big trust barrier to overcome, but I love to hear how y'all are addressing it.
Look, I think that we're gonna see like news on a lot of hacks in the in the next couple months when people's money is being arbitrarily deployed on random wallets, and I think AWS is here to solve that problem. And so you see in the demo video that you just watched, AWS is the infrastructure layer on top of which MoonPay agents works.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next, is sort of so like right now, if, on the individual side of the moonpay.com website, this Moon Agents card is kind of front and center. It's a way to get involved. It's a way to bring some of this to life. Talk a little bit about this product and maybe one, like where this OWS ecosystem under it, how it's fitting into this specifically, but then also what I'd imagine to be the opportunity for other like products or similarly architected products this represents for other builders or other teams. And I'm just curious, like more on this card. This is the first time I'm seeing this card. This is sweet.
Card is really, really well designed. It's a stablecoin debit card that operates on your OWS wallet. And the way it works is you spin up an OWS wallet and you generate a card that spends directly from the USDT on that card. You can use that card anywhere. You can set your approvals on the card via the blockchain, via these approval transactions. And then you can take that card and put it in Apple Pay or Google Pay, or you can even just give it to a browser use agent, and the browser use agent will then take those credit card credentials, go to a merchant's checkout page, input the credit card credentials without any input from the user, and do that entire process headlessly. So the big problems that we've seen in finance is made for humans. Checkout pages are made for humans. Currently, the payment methods are cards, and cards are also made for humans. And so we built MoonPay Agents Card in order to connect interfaces made for humans with interfaces made for agents. This product effectively allows people with OpenClaw or people which use other clients like Perplexity Computer, ZoComputer, Coke.com, and so on and so forth to spin up a credit card that's linked to their AWS wallet and spend it headlessly.
Right. So this card and how it's positioned seems really focused on, and I'm in the kind of individuals part of the website. What is your view on, because I know Sodot was a huge acquisition lately, building into the institutional narrative and the business side of MoonPay, which we can get into, but where do you see the differences here for like more institutional enterprise B2B use cases versus the individual ones? For us, for our business, Stable Dash, like I'm even thinking right now is like, how can we start getting involved with spinning up things like this? Are things like this available today for enterprises, or is this more so focused on individuals, at least right now? And how you just think about the differences there.
Product that you just saw are B2C. And I think when you think about what B2C and what B2B means, I also think those definitions are collapsing with AI agents to some extent. There is a big B2B project that we're working on when it comes to AI agents that we think is going to transform how agents interact with money. Even when I think about OWS, Open Wallet Standard, and when I think about MoonPay agents, and when I think about existing CLI products, I still don't think that retail and businesses can effectively let agents access money from any client. And the reason why is that agents are extremely capable when provided a file system as a tool. The reason why is because agents, foundation models, OpenAI and Anthropic, train coding specific models. These domain specific models applied to coding are really good at using a file system and file system commands in order to operate, which means that we've built all these tools that operate on a file system, but it turns out that the clients people use don't have access to a file system. The most popular clients that people use are actually mobile apps like ChatGPT and Claude. Those mobile apps, their backend is a database, and there are a couple solutions to this. One, I think the coolest solution is virtualized file systems. Virtualized file systems are this concept where you take an interface. The most popular thing I think is called Just Bash. It's authored by Russell. And essentially that interface has implemented all the bash commands and transforms them into something that interacts directly with a database. And so you get a database is speed and low cost, as well as a file system's like command structure. This relates like entirely to how we're training foundation models. Everybody uses Codex, everybody uses Opus. These foundation models are trained almost entirely on code. They're not trained on other domains. That's why as software engineers, we think these models are so intelligent and so cracked, and actually people in other domains are like, wow, wait a minute, like these models are kind of stupid. And the reason why is because they're domain specific models. So
Zach, where does your mind go with this?
My mind's going a few different directions. When you had that site up with the MoonPay agents card, I was just looking at the few kind of listed use cases, shopping and errands, travel booking, subscriptions and recurring spend, business purchasing. I thought it was interesting to think about the collapse of these B2C and B2B use cases. Even what you just said, Neeraj, about the sort of like software engineers think these models are so smart. Other people in other domains are kind of like throwing out something like agentic payments, giving an agent your card can seem kind of far-fetched. But then you think, wouldn't it be nice to have an agent recurringly buy groceries for me? Think about you're managing a household, you got 3 kids, you're all this, and then it's like, of course, all the B2B payments that are recurring that need to be handled, that you get behind on and all this. It's having the ultimate assistant, and it feels like the gap in sort of handing this off is so right. I don't know about you guys, but if you rewind a couple of years ago, I'm remembering offshoring, hiring virtual assistants, and authorizing somebody from another country to say, like, here's a credit card that I had some rules on and I would watch and all this. But I trusted this person. But it's like, I was doing this with another human. And Jay, you're pointing out, like, maybe that human, she was very trustworthy, but maybe it's like, can we really trust humans as much as we could trust these agents anyway? It's like just the natural progression. An assistant, quote unquote, that is agentic can only be so effective without the ability to transact. And it's taking it in my mind from, oh, this is far-fetched out there. People just want to talk about agentic payments because it sounds sexy, to like, of course, this is coming and it's coming really soon. And I can actually see the adoption use cases becoming more real and more accelerated quickly. Personally, I'm thinking like, yeah, how can I start using this?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Maybe
Yeah.
question for you just on the opportunity here. So we have like when I was entering my career, it was sort of the reign of like the API software sales world where like APIs were just dominating and like that was the paradigm tech was in where it's like you sell an API, you process that, you price that on a per call basis, and then you can build extremely scalable businesses that are super profitable based on top of that. And we have seen like the API paradigm for the last like 10, 15 years really reign, but it was a very human involved paradigm. Where do you see this next? It almost feels like we're kind of at the dawn of something. Oh my gosh, I said it. The beginning, damn, the beginning of something new.
Great branding.
Oh
Good job,
God,
Raj.
I guess that clicked for me in that moment. But how do you see what now happens? It seems like there's so much that is now possible. But how should people be thinking about what's possible in this like agent native economy?
Human native methods to pay for APIs involve these things called subscriptions, where you pay a lump sum for some lump sum of credits, and then those credits run out, and then you pay another lump sum for another lump sum of credits. And now the paradigms introduced by MPP and X402 mean instead of paying lump sum, which is inefficient, you may not use some credits. You're paying on a per credit basis. And you can do that because the existing blockchain technology is fast enough and cheap enough to support that. Yeah, I think that will be the case. I actually don't think it's like an incredible amount of friction. I don't see it as the like most transformational outcome. I think again, like we can fit these building blocks of human native methods of payment and agent native methods of payment together forcefully if need be with browser use and computer use and agent based credit cards, and agents can still operate in this world. To me, I actually think that the harder problem is not getting agents with payment credentials to pay for something. It's actually granting agents the payment credentials in the first place. There's still a lot of friction there, and there's still a lot of like trust assumptions that haven't been solved. And so I think that the players that are able to effectively give agents payment credentials easily are going to, win massively. That to me is like
What's so
massive.
difficult about that currently? Like why is that such a barrier to entry?
I'll give a simple example. ChatGPT or Claude mobile apps. I don't know how to give my payment credentials to either of those two apps. I think it's literally impossible right now. And that to me, that shocks me. It means that people with access to the two most popular artificial intelligence apps of all time cannot pay whatsoever. And there's really no avenue to do it right now. And what we're working on at MoonPay with all these acquisitions and resourcing that we have, the regulatory licensing that we have, is to give the ability of any client anywhere on mobile, on desktop, on different hardware surfaces, the ability to retrieve scoped payment credentials.
Do you think that's something from those two companies specifically? They're obviously thinking about this. They're not like aloof to this opportunity. What is the putting yourself in their shoes, the reason they may not be doing this right now? Is it a risk-based decision? Is it a build complexity that they're facing? Is it something they want to be really thoughtful over time to introduce? Obviously, it's not there today. Why do you think that is?
These companies are really taking territory of vibe coded swap. So if there's any company that can be vibe coded swap and you're okay with that, then OpenAI and Anthropic are almost certainly going to win. You see that with primarily like with data related companies, and you see that with industries where if the data is wrong, there's not an incredible cost to that. However, when it comes to payment credentials, there's actually an incredible cost to being wrong or being hacked. And so I don't think that you can vibe code this. On top of that, there's actually like a lot of government regulatory licensing that is required, like things like money transmission licenses and other stuff in order to effectively enable payments. So yes, they may be working on it, but it's not something that they can easily work on without a partner that specializes on payments.
Can you speak a little? We reported on this at top of the show around the history that MoonPay has had, the regulatory capture, and just robustness on the licensing side that they have because they've been around for so long. Can you speak a little bit to that and the kind of advantages that that provides in this conversation? I know we were talking specifically about Max von Wallenberg as he was thinking about the idea of selling the business and going through this. One of the key things for him that he said was just the depth of regulatory licensing and things like that MoonPay brings, and how fast that can accelerate certain businesses who are younger or are in the startup world. How are you thinking about that in terms of your decision to partner with MoonPay in this way? And what does that look like for those who aren't familiar?
I mean, Max has such an incredible background in finance. He really knows what he's talking about when it comes to regulatory licensing and all the blockers that's required in order to get a finance app out. In my opinion, I think there are four moats that exist in launching any product today. The first moat is technical talent. The second moat is capital, money. The third moat is regulatory licensing. And the fourth moat is distribution among users. And I think that OpenAI and Anthropic and other foundation model companies are able to consume or subsume any businesses that only rely on the first moat, the technical talent moat, because it turns out foundation models are now better technically than most people. However, latter three moats actually meaningfully still exist. The latter three moats being capital, regulatory,
I was like
arbitrage,
there. I was forgetting that
and
one. Yeah.
And, maybe capital is not as relevant. Foundation models, companies are very, very well capitalized, but regulatory moats and distribution still matter. Regulatory like moats, they just take several years and a lot of time and a lot of trust in order to develop and gain. Also, back to the capital mode, it's not, as simple as just having capital. It's also thinking about effectively moving capital. Think about on-ramping and off-ramping. It's actually like an incredibly complicated thing to do, despite seeming simple. It involves a number of regulatory licenses. It involves like complicated movements of money. There's a lot that is involved that is way beyond just the technology that perhaps can be vibe coded.
And when you think about MoonPay specifically in those three kind of last areas, capital, regulation, and distribution, especially in those kind of complex areas around on-ramping, off-ramping, things like that, how did those strengths play into you personally being excited to partner with them in this way?
One, I like that at this company, we're not afraid to take on the biggest players and the biggest problems in the space. You see it from our acquisition strategy. We genuinely are playing to win. I think that's really important. Back to your question, though, I think at MoonPay, we have all four moats. We have the technical talent, especially through these acquisitions. We have the capital. We have the regulatory licensing. We've had the regulatory license. We've always had a lot of regulatory licensing, and we've also continuously acquired companies in order to get that regulatory licensing. And the fourth mode is distribution. We already have a consumer app that is very, very popular. And with all the new projects that we're launching, we're also have, incredible amount of mind share. So I think MoonPay, as far as these four modes are concerned, is very, very well positioned.
Maybe my last question here would be just who are those big competitors or big organizations that you're going after? Like when you even think about the opportunity that's ahead and who is running that race, maybe specifically with the agent side of what MoonPay is doing, how do you think about the lane that you're in and who else is perhaps in that you're trying to go up against in this way?
Preface this by saying I hesitate to use the word competitor. I think like the financial payment space is extremely large and the pie is massive. And there's a lot of complementary things that we're doing with everyone. I would say like there are a couple players that maybe matter in the Asian payment space, and those players would be Stripe, Coinbase, MoonPay.
But there you have it. Yeah.
It is an interesting dynamic. You point that out. Even on a sort of vibes level, one is a huge pie. There's a ton of opportunities for collaboration and integration. So it's sort of like competitors versus collaborators. There's also kind of these are people who have moved early. I feel like there's kind of a game respects game. It's like, yeah, we might be up against each other in some ways, but there's also, I see what you're building. I like how you're taking this thesis. That your answer even kind of reflects, I feel like, the vibe of the industry.
Yeah. Look,
that's
there are no like eternal enemies or no eternal friends, I guess.
Neeraj, anything we've missed on this or not covered or not highlighted in terms of the acquisition, what you're building next, or like final thoughts from your side as we
My other disclaimer is I think it incorrectly says in the tagline that I'm a business officer. I'm not. I'm an engineer. So take my business with a grain of salt. There it goes. And then I think the second thing I'll highlight, just as this show is coming to a close, is we are launching a trading competition with the Dawn CLI that gives non-technical users the ability to trade. And I'm kind of excited to see what people come up with. The trading competition is likely going to start this week.
What does that
7
look
days.
like? Like, what do you mean? So like we're both, Zach and myself, are non-technical. We probably fall in that bucket. What do we do? Where do we go? What is at stake here?
Well, here's what I want you to do. 1, install the Codex desktop app. If you haven't used the Codex desktop app, I'll do some free advertising for OpenAI. It's incredible. It's really good. And I think it supercharges non-technical people to work on technical things without seeing any of the technical complexity. So 1, install the Codex desktop app. 2, go to cli.dawn.ai and copy and paste that one-liner on the website into your Codex app, click enter. And that's really all you need to do in order to start launching any strategy that will automatically trade for you. The nice thing about Dawn is that it enables you to trade with paper money. Paper money essentially means you trade virtually and you're able to see how well these strategies do without risking any real funds. And then of course you can trade with real funds.
It reminds me of a Finance 1000 at college. Remember this class where they like gave you, and at my university they gave us like a fake account with like who could earn the most. It's a great way to learn, kind of getting that. What is the Claude equivalent of Codex? What's that called?
There's the Claude desktop app.
And how do you compare those two? And why is Codex in your mind superior for this use case? Because I think for us, our organization is pretty Claude heavy. Like we've done most things on Claude so far.
Yeah, Claude desktop app is also really good and it will work in this case. You just have to go to the Claude Code tab on the Claude desktop app. There's 3 tabs. There's the Claude Chat app, the Claude Cowork tab, and the Claude Code tab. Go to that 3rd tab and then you can do the same flow. The reason why I think the Claude desktop app is slightly worse than the Codex app is it imposes too much structure on the agent. The structure is the fact that there are 3 tabs and 3 different actions. Because agents are intelligent, you don't need to impose structure. We saw this early at Dawn where we tried to impose specific coding frameworks and specific tools and specific abilities into the agent. And the agent actually prefers to be flexible in this case. And so Codex automatically detects if you're asking a question, you're trying to interact with documents, or you're trying to do a task that might involve coding. And that's completely abstracted away from the user. And I'm sure Claude Desktop is going to copy them in a few days, but you can completely do this from Claude Desktop.
We're in the world of days now, which is crazy. What is the reward for this competition, or what is the incentive for those who win?
There is, I think, $7,500 total in prizes, maybe more. Don't quote me on that.
Sit down dinner with Ivan.
Definitely sit down dinner with me. I don't know if it's that valuable, but yeah.
Oh, man. Well, thanks for taking your time on such a huge week. We're extremely excited to, one, continue covering the intersection of like agents and money and where this is all going. I think for us, there's a huge opportunity to actually carve out more like intentional programming specifically around this, and really help people get up to speed and get involved and on base with some of this. So yeah, when we think about companies to work with and partner with, and that MoonPay is top of that list. I think you guys are doing some really cool stuff. So thank you for the time, and congrats on it's funny thinking back to the first conversation we had where I don't know what the timeline was and when this was finalized or what, but It's nice to have all of this out in the open now, and excited for the future that's ahead at MoonPay.
Thank you so much. And we love you guys.